The core of our operations on Europa had a strict timetable, determined by the goals of the mission and the requirement to keep the base's life support system operational systems that we came to access in order to access the moon's deep ocean. There is a realm beneath miles of ice that is said to have more water than all combined. The oceans of Earth offer an alluring prospect, particularly when beginning. The suits sensed that the probe had found heat traces and intricate organic compounds in that subterranean ocean. Every movement becomes more difficult due to the rigid fabric and the system of life support systems that held us bound to a precarious existence. But there were times, brief and infrequent moments, when the solitude, constant danger, and mission-related stress seemed to subside. There were times when the team found comfort in watching old movies, playing card games, or sharing meals. These were the moments that kept us sane and served as a reminder of our common bond, displayed on a screen in the common area. In contrast to the huge, uncaring universe, humanity uses geothermal drilling to drill a massive spike of metal, and near the base, where it was designed, the terrain was dominated by composite materials to endure extreme temperatures and pressures. As it pierced the ice, and it currently waited in the final adjustments prior to starting the last push, which was the most crucial stage of the operation. The previous few weeks had been dominated by the last system inspections, in which we had performed many simulations and examined each system in an attempt to anticipate every scenario that might arise. But there was always a degree of uncertainty and a feeling of taking a chance. The unknown. I performed a diagnostic on the main hydraulic system of the drill. Everything appeared to be in order as the figures streamed on the screen in a language I understood better than any spoken tongue. And yet, perhaps due to the pressure, a knot of uneasiness tightened in my stomach. The burden of accountability, or perhaps it was something else I was unable to fully express. Point to a previous error that left a shadow that followed me for millions of miles. The word rang in my head like a silent indictment from Earth to Mars, so I pushed the concentrating on the task at hand. Yet the memory persisted like a ghostly limb from a previous existence that I believed I had abandoned the mission, which had been a catastrophe with a string of interconnected mishaps that resulted in the death of a crew member was, at the very least, my fault. I had revisited those final moments even though the official investigation had exonerated me of any wrongdoing. I replayed the events in my mind 1,000 times, trying to find a different method to stop the catastrophe. But it was now a pointless exercise in self-deprecation, as pointless as attempting to comprehend Jupiter's whirling gases. The Europa mission was intended to be a new beginning, an opportunity to show myself and dispel any remaining concerns. However, I couldn't get rid of the idea that we were tempting fate as we got closer to the end of our efforts, going somewhere that no human had ever been before, where the laws of nature might be altered, potentially rewriting the laws of physics themselves. The readings from the unprecedented first investigations suggested an ecosystem powered by chemical reactions not found on Earth with organic substances grouped in astonishing ways. There was even discussion of it had taken me years to realize that life is more complicated than microbes. Muster the bravery to return to space after years of overcoming the guilt, fear, and residual trauma of what occurred on Mars. But I'm afraid that something has changed in the years after, was no longer founded on self-doubt, but rather on the idea that space exploration is a worthwhile endeavor. Martin's voice pierced my ear, his young face etched with worry. Was constantly noticing details that others overlooked because they believed I forced a smile and asked, "Is it Martin? We're going to create history, or becoming history?" He joked, but his voice had a tremor of nervousness. Indeed, it seemed as though we were perched on a precipice, and the ground was finally, after the last tests were finished and approved with the customary fanfare. The drill started. Its inexorable decline was a gradual process, with each victory meter being difficult. But as we got closer to the desired depth, The data started to diverge initially, the pressure readings were not drastically different from the expected projections. The temperature gradients were no longer sharply oscillating, but rather slipping like a climber's grip. Linear with a faint but noticeable divergence, they weren't what was anticipated. Readings, which resembled whispers of an unidentified variable, or hidden factor that we hadn't taken into consideration. I presented my worries to the team, gave them the facts, and spoke in a tense voice with a prediction I couldn't explain. They listened, examined, but it was generally agreed that although it was a thoughtful dismissal, Grant Taylor stated, stretching the limits of what this device was intended for, his gaze focused on the varying graphs show that these variances are within the statistical range of error for stress cracks in the ice, maybe or unexpected areas of denser substance. Martin included that the models are unable to. Considering all the variables, we realized there would be unknowns. So we ran diagnostics justifications were reasonable, even likely, but they failed. To calm the rising knot of fear in my stomach, it seemed as though we were lacking a vital component, and the ice underneath us contained a secret that refused to give up lightly. And then the news broke about the neutrino conversion matrix of the drill. Periodically malfunctioning vital components are replaced with a backup, although still, it was easy to overlook the report because it was buried in a pile of data, have raised concerns and demanded a pause, but there was tremendous pressure to move forward because everyone was keeping an eye on Reputation's career. The future of space travel itself was in jeopardy, and at the back of the part of me that craved redemption wanted to see this through to the end. Demonstrate that I wasn't a failure and that I could still contribute and have an impact. Therefore, I pushed putting my misgivings aside.